everyone. I'm gonna give about a couple seconds for more people to join before we officially kick things off. All right, good afternoon again, and thank you so much for joining today's Wednesday Wise webinar. My name is Sydney Konahia with the International Franchise Association, and we have a great 60 minutes lined up for you all today. Just two things before I introduce our topic and speakers, but the webinar will be recorded, and the recording and slide deck will be sent around to everyone post-webinar. And if you do have any questions for today's speakers, please feel free to add them to the chat or questions box. Today's topic is No Lead Left Behind, how Molly Maid put AI on the front line, and is brought to us by Vendasta. Here to provide today's discussion are Chris Diani, Head of Enterprise Expansion with Vendasta, Molly Maid President Michael Silva Nash, and Franchise Systems Specialist Jacqueline Drury. Thank you all for joining us and Vendasta for sponsoring today's Wednesday Wise webinar. I'll now turn things over to our speakers to get us started.
Wonderful. Appreciate it, Sydney. Thanks for that introduction. I'm really excited to talk today about everything Molly Maid's been doing with AI and Rosie. We get to introduce Rosie on a webinar, which is a lot of fun. I'll try not to speak about Rosie as a human or as a person. It is an AI agent, but I often find myself saying she's doing great. Wonderful job, Rosie. But let's kind of get into the presentation and meet our guest here. So, as Sydney said, we have Michael Silva Nash, president of Molly Maid, Jacqueline Drury, franchise systems manager at Molly Maid. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Molly Maid brand for maybe 9 years now, and really heavily with Jacqueline and Michael Silva Nash over the past 2 years as we've worked on together with Vendasta and Molly Maid rolling out Rosie and the AI stack to their franchise owners. So thank you very much for joining us. And I thought we could take a quick second, if you could each introduce yourself, give a little bit of background, starting with Michael, maybe something, with how you are with franchise, your franchise
Yeah,
background, a little bit of
absolutely.
information.
Yeah, I've got a very particular and unique story. As you know, Chris, really grew up in the Molly Maid business. My mom actually started in Molly Maid as a house cleaner. And then she became the office manager. Then she bought out the business in Little Rock, Arkansas. And then, of course, just grew up in the business and eventually became a franchise owner. So was actually a franchise owner with Molly Maid for about 12 years. During that time frame, also purchased and resold the Northwest Arkansas location. So at some point, what had at least two locations, and then in 2023, joined Molly Maid on the corporate side as vice president of operations for the brand. And so it was great to take everything I'd learned over the years as a Molly Maid franchise owner. And when I left that location, we were the second largest in the country as far as Molly Maid locations. So be able to take all the learnings and help the rest of the system apply that and learn from that and just run really fast with that was amazing. And then December 1st, I was moved up to brand president for Molly Maid. So I have had the very fortunate and distinct honor to work with the Molly Maid franchise owners, the neighborly teams, and of course, our internal team, which includes Jacqueline. So Jacqueline
Appreciate
Hungoff.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jacqueline, say a little bit about your franchise background at Molly Maid. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Chris. So first of all, thanks for having us. This is exciting stuff. So I've been with Molly Maid for 5 years, actually, this month. Before that, though, I was a franchisee myself, kind of like Michael's mom. I started off as a part-time employee, and then became manager, and then decided to own my own. So I did that, and so I've been in the franchising industry for about 23 years at this point.
Fantastic. And working with all the owners daily, as we all know.
Oh,
I don't know
yes.
when you say like Michael's mom, I don't know if I can put those references together again, but thanks. I really appreciate it. And then I think we can have Rosie introduce herself. That'd be great if she could. We could have Rosie jump in here, but we're going to talk a lot about Rosie, this virtual AI agent and employee going forward. Again, appreciate your time joining us. For all those out there that maybe didn't hear Sitting at the beginning, we do have team here from Vendasta that are monitoring the web chat and the Q&A. They'll be out there for any questions you have and be able to hopefully answer those while we're talking here. The idea of today's conversation on this webinar is not a formal presentation. I hate to use the term fireside chat, but it is this idea that we're having a nice conversation about Molly Maid and how they've rolled out this AI. So over this, you're going to learn about what it looked like to launch it, what it looks like to manage it, the adoption from the franchise owners, lessons learned along the way, and then some advice from Michael and Jacqueline here. So we started with this number, right? Neighborly had done a research project. This is just over 2 years ago, where roughly 30% of the leads were being missed. This was kind of coined as corporate crime. Now, this were leads across digital as well as phone calls, but this idea that franchise owners are very busy. People that are running businesses can often miss leads. And this was kind of a corporate crime situation. So as we see this number and we think about it, Michael, especially as you're now running Molly Maid, talk to me a little bit about, knowing that this was happening. What was that moment or those, like when you decided you need to move past what you were doing for lead engagement and kind of
Yeah.
think about AI?
Yeah, I think every time we try to approach an issue is, like I'm sure many people in the audience, we try to look at it from the shoes and the lives of the franchisee, and just understanding, for Molly specifically, you have a washer and dryer that's buzzing in the background. You have a flat tire with the car down the road, right? You have an employee that just called out sick, and usually you're dealing with all the problems that are right in front of you, right in your face. And naturally, that means that sometimes some of the leads fall in the cracks, right? Like it doesn't become that urgent thing, although it should be. It's not that urgent thing. And so understanding that, knowing that, seeing these numbers, but quite frankly, also seeing and understanding something that everybody knows, which is time kills all deals. And that the longer you wait, really at the 30-minute mark, your opportunity to close that lead just goes down dramatically. And so just finding solutions on how can we get to these leads a lot faster. And then also, what really opened up our minds and our eyes was just knowing that we have that relationship with you and Vendasta, and just starting dreaming up what we could do to try to avoid from missing all these leads.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey where we originally started as a web chat and then just moved into this fully
Yeah.
automated system to capture the leads based on a lot of your guys' feedback, which has been good to work with. Jacqueline, any kind of stories there, maybe when you were a franchise owner talking to the individual franchisees today on, missed leads and how that was a challenge for them?
Yeah, so definitely nights and weekends, we're missing leads for sure. But I think it's
Hmm.
also meeting the customers at their needs, right? A lot of customers want to text now, and that's what Rosie does. So, when somebody's worked all day, came home, dealt with the kids, and then at night, 11 o'clock at night, they're laying in bed. They're like, "Oh yeah, crap! I forgot to do I forgot to do this," and they go online and they can just book something right then and there. So.
Yeah, it's great feedback. I find myself, I abandon forms all the time. I start doing something, then I'm running off to kids' soccer practice, or my boss is giving me a phone call, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I had started this form, I gave some information, and then being able to have an immediate reminder or something that I'm familiar with text messaging, I certainly appreciate that. It's a good call out. All right, so we need to tell this audience who Rosie is. What is this? We've kind of been talking about her as this digital employee, but I want to get into it, and I'll give a little introduction here. Rosie's an AI agent. She's part of the AI workforce that Molly Maid has chose to customize and train and deliver on through the Vendasta platform. And what that looks like, excuse me, what that looks like is started as just a simple, like a really great web chat. Let's get a web chat on the website and let's really train this thing to be very knowledgeable and answer FAQs and all of this. But then it moved into, as Jacqueline just said, SMS. And you can say, okay, great, that's a channel. And then what about third party leads? So, really, what Rosie is a digital receptionist handling all the digital leads and inbounds across the Molly Maid platform. And Jacqueline, for those of you who kind of picture this as like this rigid like chatbot, it's not. And I'd love maybe if you can elaborate a bit on how does Rosie kind of function day to day when a customer reaches out? How does she qualify and answer those questions?
Well, Rosie is like we reference her like she's an actual person. Like we talk about Rosie all the time. So she's very personable. She responds to people if they, mention they had a bad day or somebody's coming to visit. Like she'll reference that in her conversation back. So she sounds very real. But yeah, I mean, so she gets all the information she needs to book it, whatever type of appointment needs to get booked. She can go to the point of sale for that, specific business and see their availability and their pricing and their things like that. So she asks all the questions just like a CSR would.
You mentioned that point of sale. What's that tie-in and that integration that was so key for the owners as you were rolling this out?
Oh gosh. So there's a lot, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of testing that we had to do. But yeah, I mean, So the owners, we had to train them to essentially open up another dashboard to have that Vendessa dashboard open, but also to connect it to, to the point of sale to make sure that all the appointments were coming through and things. Um, there was a lot of tests. There's so many ways. I was talking to Michael earlier. It's like a spider web. There's so many different ways that the
Mhm.
conversation could go. So there was a lot of testing for sure.
Yeah, a lot of testing and kind of meeting the owner with where they're used to. We didn't want to make massive change. They're used to operating in their point of sale, and layering in another platform was helpful to engage the customers. But I
Mhm.
found that like they just wanted to operate their day to day as they always have been. So connecting with those point of sales and getting that information pushed directly into there, I thought really helped the adoption across your network because it was a little more familiar. You talk about her as an employee and a person, Michael. There's a personality here, and that personality I
Oh,
kind of think
yes.
comes from Jacqueline, maybe from you as well. But there's this wonderful personality that Rosie has, and you as an owner and somebody who grew up in a large franchise and now where you are, how did that help shape the way you trained Rosie?
Absolutely. So first, I think that I haven't seen anyone drop the question in the chat, but I bet people are wondering. At Neighborly, we have our code of values, and one of them is having fun in the process. And we were naming Rosie and really putting her persona. We wanted to have fun with it too. So Rosie is also kind of based off, a play off the color pink from Molly Maid, and then also off the Jetsons. But the point was like, let's make her personable, where people feel like they can engage with her, and she is part of that team, right? And so, like as a franchise owner, it's very easy to just paint this as another technology that your brand's rolling out, something else, another initiative. It's the initiative of the week type of thing. But so when we're launching Rosie, instead of making it cold and not and just again another dashboard, another technology, we wanted to make it where it was clear that this is somebody else that's on your team to help you become more efficient in your day to day, right? Everything had to be about how do we add value back to our franchise owners. And so when we were training her, to answer your question, it was really centered around all of that. So how can we become more efficient? How can we make sure that this is what we kind of coined and what kind of we really been calling over the last years as layering it elegantly with our processes. So that way it's not just something else, it's attacking at the customer, and just making sure that it works seamlessly with the very complex SOPs that we have for lead management at the brand.
Yeah, you guys certainly have a very complex system. I remember when we started working with you, a lot of my engineers and the team were like, "Whoa, what is a lot of customization?" But but what was really nice about it was that constant iteration and feedback that you did and that testing. And then what I found is that because the system's so configurable, we were able to kind of adjust, weekly, monthly, et cetera, and kind of use that feedback without major overhauls, just kind of adopting and fixing the prompts and fixing the knowledge base, which was nice. Kind of before we move on from meeting Rosie, I did want to talk about like she's not just this reactive bot necessarily, right? Like sitting on a web chat on a website is helpful and there's thousands of messages going in there. But we also kind of made this reactive automated agent. So Jacqueline, can you talk to us a bit about the different lead types and like abandoned web forms and those things within your business that Rosie's meeting? Like what kind of channel are customers coming from that are then engaging with Rosie?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much any lead. So any lead that comes in, whether it's a web form that was abandoned or somebody followed through and actually booked an appointment. So she's actually engaging with all leads that come in. So we have a different path, a different flow, different verbiage that she uses for all the different type of leads or even appointments that are booked.
Yeah, and I think here it's important to know AI versus automations. And what Jacqueline was referencing for the audience is that all these different leads come in, right? Whether it's a web form, a web chat, a third party, and they come in, and then MollyMaid has done a really nice job at building outbound SMS cadences. That's an automated engagement via outbound SMS to any inbound lead. At that point, really, right, we're not talking about Rosie yet. We're talking about some fixed, very curated outbound language that it engages with a homeowner. Like, I have 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2,000 square feet. Great. Hey, this is what we know about you. I'd like to continue on and get you to book. Um, did we work through some of those cadences back then? To be frank, I wasn't there or I wasn't doing this, but how did you guys settle in on what's the right amount of cadence to engage a customer that inbounded with you? Maybe Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. And so first, like we have we're very fortunate to be very data driven at Molly Maid, and we have been for a good amount of time. And so it was looking back to see what works already. I say this often. I say this to the team, and I say this to the franchise owners: is the best ideas don't come from the seventh floor of a building in Texas where we're headquartered, right? It comes from the franchise owners, and it comes from what we see working in the field. And so taking those learnings and then applying it to systems like this, and then replicating that, what the power of that is, then you're replicating that across the entire brand, which again just lets you move a lot faster. So that's what we did. We looked inwardly. We looked to see what worked for our brand and what's been successful for our owners, and then we tested it, we tweaked it, we tested it again, we tweaked it again, and worked with your team to get it right. So
Yes, and I
Great.
want
And I think that, oh,
to
go ahead, Jacqueline.
sorry, I just want to give a shout out to your team. Yes, we asked lots of questions and we had lots of ideas, and yeah, we definitely made some changes throughout as we learned. And like Michael said, from the franchisees, a lot of it was right, like us watching conversations and understanding what what the leads, the customers, were saying, how they were interacting. So it was a lot of feedback. But then and then we updated it again with the help of the Vendasta team.
Well, yeah, shout out to our team member, Gabriel. I just want to get his name out there. He is a huge part of this. I have a funny story that I'll share. We were at an IFA conference. We saw Michael in the lobby. He saw Gabe for the first time. He hangs up on his own mother on the phone call so he could
yeah,
have a moment to meet Gabe. It was clear that power, that partnership was strong. I appreciated that.
that's for
Okay, so you were talking about rolling it out, Michael, to the full thing. So it's nice to think about Rosie as a single agent, but if you do that on a single agent, how do you then roll it out across an entire system of franchises? Hundreds of websites, et cetera, and phone numbers and such. You guys have really rolled there out across 239 different franchise owners. And we're seeing roughly 5,000 bookings. So I know somewhere in the questions they asked about quantifying the value here. But this is some of the data we've seen where talk to us, Michael, about how do you quantify a little bit of the ROI and some of the metrics on the screen?
Absolutely. So obviously it's going to be speed to lead, lead conversion. But one of the things that we, cannot talk often enough about is the profitability of our franchise owners. And so first of all, now their CSRs are focused on other items that help enhance the customer experience, instead of being focused on being the first to call. And then if something does roll over to call center, this is also help them save on call center fees. And so we're able to get more done with less dollars, and then we can focus those dollars to reinvest back into the business through local marketing, or other initiatives. So really both on the human capital, and then also just being able to reallocate the other funds from call center over to marketing investments has been extremely helpful for the brand, and just again helps us move a lot faster.
I like that perspective. And when I talk to some other partners, it's often about net new. Like, how many net new things am I getting out of this? Which obviously is critical. But what you're saying too is that the measurable cost savings, like maybe a franchise owner got 100 leads before and they still have 100 leads, but now they're not spending time on the phone, back and forth emailing, paying for call center leads,
Right.
et cetera. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, it's how do you convert more of your existing dollars? Because I'm sure that everyone that's watching this knows that one of the hardest things you can do is get a franchise owner to spend more money in marketing. And sometimes, yes, more can be better, but also how do you convert more of what you already have, right? And that way you get them leaned in, and you get their attention. And that way, so if they see that they're converting more of what they're already getting, it's the conversation of investing more is also easier. So both a win for the owner and one for the brand.
Got it. Now, this rollout and brand standards, I think, all the other brands should plug their ears. Molly Maid did this the best, right? Where you guys really set the tone, and I want to say draw a hard line in the sand, but you were very specific about the brand standard and this rolling out across the system. Jacqueline, how did that help as we were trying to get it from one little test agent to 239 production agents?
So yeah, that's a great question. So Rosie follows suit to what our website does. So they mirror each other essentially. And so it makes it easier to train. to train Rosie, what she says, how she answers, things like that. The offices can add their own, like, so for instance, at Molly Maid, we have the Miss Molly Foundation. So if they work with a local organization, they can plug that into Rosie's knowledge base. So if somebody asks, "Hey, what organization do you support with your Miss Molly Foundation?" They have it in there. Um, so I think it was the owners already were familiar with the website and how it worked. So I think just helping them realize that, hey, this isn't anything new. This is how it's always been. This is how our website works. Um,
Exactly.
I think that was part of it. Do you want to add anything, Michael?
Yeah, it was the same thing, just a different channel.
Hmm.
And on top of that, Jacqueline's not taking enough credit because she is a deployment specialist. She knows how to deploy like crazy, get owner buy-in, get people leaned in, take feedback, make sure that people feel heard and are just bought in it during the process. So seeing her really engage with our owner community, and then the training was we wanted to make sure, first of all, we owned the training. We didn't, as great as you and your team are, Chris, we want to make sure they were hearing from us and they were learning from us, and that our coaches also could speak to the product too. And so that made everyone feel more comfortable. And I mean, we hosted training across the country. We literally went to 5 different cities, and this was part of our training event. And so we were moving so fast that as we went from city to city, our training changed because every time we got somewhere to a different city, we were launching something new, literally like that day or the day before.
Right.
But yeah, but that's what it just, you have to get the deployment right, and get owner buy-in, and that's what we did, and we turned everybody on at the same time.
Yeah, I want to highlight what you said there. We call them SMEs, right? SME, subject matter
Mhm.
experts. And you guys really focus in on that concept of owning this. And us as vendors, like we always have a little bit of that barrier. It's like, it's another vendor. They're trying to sell me something or pitch me something. But I noticed with Molly Made, what really helped the success was you became those subject matter experts. At times, I think maybe more than some of our team, but it was really nice to see, and you were that trusted voice. So when we went to those, what do you call them, real events out in the U.S. here, as well as any virtual events, you could see the trust right away and the knowledge coming from you. I think helped that adoption. So shout out to that team, Jacqueline especially, and everybody else.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. So when we did roll this out, there's always going to be a little bit of that first reaction and some of those maybe objections to AI. Now, keep in mind for the audience, we did this just about 2 years ago now, roughly, is when we brought this out. So AI, wasn't brand new, but it certainly was moving quickly and getting introduced to business owners across the board. So, Jacqueline, you do interact directly with a lot of them as you did this. Was there any kind of first reactions or objections and things like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. There was a lot of skepticism. They were, just unsure of it. So what I did, so like we were rolling it out, like Michael said, at a regional events, and every couple days we had a new event and we had to update the PowerPoint because we, released something new over the last day. But I wanted them to realize that they were already using AI in their lives. Maybe it was a different version, an earlier version, but like if you're already using Alexa or Siri or Netflix, right? Netflix knows what you watch and then they give you some suggestions based on that. So like there's a lot of different versions of AI that the owners were already using and I don't think they realized it. And so getting them to realize that, hey, it's not bad.
Yeah,
Not taking anybody's job.
right,
The owners have worked so hard. They've put in their heart and soul into their business. And so their question is like, why would I trust a robot with my customers?
right,
So, they didn't want to lose the building the relationships, the customer experience, things like that, which was, a reasonable concern. So it was just getting them to realize that this is helping. It's again just another part of it. We're not trying to take away the relationship building. They were just trying to protect their business, to protect their revenue. So I think it was just explaining to them how it's going to work, how you've already using it in your lives, and then they were definitely more open to it.
got it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, for sure. So those objections to cost were kind of overcome because you offset it with cost savings. It seemed like the fear of handing the phone. This isn't really the phone in this case. This was a digital leads. But it seems like you kind of coach through that. Any bits of words of wisdom beyond what you just outlined on the coaching element of this?
I think what if I can chime in real quick,
Hmm.
one of the things is showing them the statistics of how often the phone is answered, how often is an email answered, and when you look at SMS, the response rate is much higher, or
Hmm.
the open rate it's much higher. And so really it was about challenging ourselves to evolve in a way to meeting customers at their needs, right? You want to make sure that you're evolving in that way. Our consumers are shopping differently, they're communicating differently. Most likely if we have a vendor that's trying to call us in the middle of a meeting, we're not going to be able to answer, but if they send us a quick text, we can kind of, sneak away our attention a little bit, multitask and send a text right back. And so it was challenging our owners on ha to think about how the consumer is changing and the way that they shop and what channels they're responding most to. And quite frankly, one of the numbers was that it was a 50-50 split between phone call versus text message, really, essentially, were the numbers that we were looking at. And so we had that there was a risk that by not engaging via SMS,
Yep.
that we would lose half of that crowd. And then on top of that, if you do want to respond, it's not as simple to respond via SMS because sometimes the conversation is lagged, right? You send one text, you reply back, you might text back in an hour, and then you also have, how do you templatize that conversation? And that's where leveraging Rosie to do that for us, where she, and if you don't have templates to respond via SMS, then you kind of get it's very ad hoc. It's ad lib, it's not, you
Yeah.
don't have it. It's harder to follow a process when you're typing it out like that. So having AI do that for you, making sure that you're still collecting everything you need to collect, making sure that you're, explaining the value of your services. Those things can become tough over text, to be quite frank, because it's not a
Hmm.
concise 5-10 minute conversation. It's a multi-hour, multi-day conversation, and that can be harder to track. So when
Yep.
we showed them that and just told them that this is not something that a human could reasonably do, or even if you train someone to do it really well, with turnover, you're going to be training somebody new frequently, and
Yeah.
it's going to be tough. And this is where we have to leverage technology to get this right.
Yeah, you train once, they don't call in sick, they don't sleep. You've
Yeah.
got this employee that you can help customize that way. I love that. There were some questions here I want to address in the channel. 2 to 3% seem low on conversions. Let's back up to that slide for a moment. And I think maybe we didn't do a great job explaining everything Rosie does. So Rosie isn't only engaging with like a hot lead or a hot inbound. Rosie is answering thousands and thousands of just general conversations as well as things like missed call text back. Because imagine somebody calls into the business, we meet it, and nobody can answer that call for some reason. It's not huge. Molly May does a great job at call centers, but that's like one example. But also, they're just asking questions. Like, you're coming in and inquiring about a variety of things. We see, and I can't pull it up on the screen, but every minute there's a dozen or so conversations happening across the Molly May network. I mean, really 12 to 20 conversations every 60 seconds. And those conversations are happening. It's not always about the lead. We're trying our best to convert when it is, but I wouldn't do the math of like 5,000 to 210,000. There's some differences in there in the conversations,
Yeah,
but
so
there's
for
also a lot of outreach. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say another example for us anyway is we do have a lot of people that chat and say, "Are you hiring?" So there's a
Yes,
lot
that's true.
that we that
That was
we
an early learning, right? We did not train the AI for that on the first week, and we quickly see how many people are inquiring about employment. So a little of adjustment, and now what we do is if they ask, we send them to your national job board, and they could fill out the form and then go through the proper process, but doesn't have to muddy up the leads for the franchise owner, which I really like.
Exactly. That's a great point, Chris. And that if it weren't Rosie dealing with that conversation and pointing them to that right place, then it's taking up time for an office, or that employee candidate may go find a different job somewhere else. So, yeah, great call out.
Perfect. Um, all right. So looking at kind of the things, and we've kind of highlighted some of this, but we've mentioned there was a lot of The complexity is not really the AI. You've mentioned, I think, Michael, that there was testing behind Rosie, behind her. And can we talk about some of those hurdles? How do you integrate it with the CRM and the point of sale, the testing? Maybe that's where the complexity lived, is what you mentioned in the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's always going to be the tricky part is clearly I'm not a tech guy. Don't work in IT, so I don't. In my mind, I oversimplify how easy it should be to plug those things in. But even the operational piece, right? You have to really take a step back and think through what are my SOPs, how should lead management be executed for my brand, and then where does this fit in to cause minimal disruption to what you already have. And so that's where I think in brainstorming with Jacqueline through the process, what we did was very unique in how we it doesn't interrupt anything else that we have, and owners were able to continue running with what they already did. If there was a lead that Rosie wasn't able to communicate with or follow up with, to make sure that we're not substituting, we're not doing less, we're just enhancing what we currently have.
Yeah, exactly right. I appreciate that. Surprises, were there any kind of like looking at some of those wins, but the surprises along the way? Maybe Jacqueline, you catch any, and you're talking to the owners every day.
I am. So Michael and I chatted about this earlier. I'm going to let him tell the story.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Am I
They
going to
want
tell the
him.
story? No, I mean you just don't know. Human behavior is one of the most unpredictable things on
Ah,
the planet, right? It's so you just there's some things you have to train Rosie on that you don't anticipate. Like you said, like employee candidates and just how do you put them in the recruiting flow versus the customer flow, right? And there's other challenges. So kind of just a little more lighthearted but serious at the time. You can look back now and laugh, but we had someone from a nudist colony reach out and try. It wasn't, you didn't expect for Rosie to have a follow-up to that, but that was something that you don't anticipate, a surprise that came in.
sure.
And who would have thought about that, right? And so now Rosie's trained on how to deal with that. And had to handle the conversation with a lot of grace while also protecting our franchise owners and their employees. But the fact is, in all seriousness, it's you're not going to get it all right immediately, but it's being able to be flexible, nimble, and pivot quickly to whatever you learn for your specific industry or business.
It makes me realize, like maybe before this, you didn't have the insight into these hundreds of thousands of conversations that you do now. Like
Yeah.
that funny, nudist conversation, sure, but there's all these other insights that at a corporate level you're now gaining. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? How about you guys are able to see everything? You have this lens to your network and all these engagements with the customers.
So I'll speak
Yeah.
to that. Michael can jump in if he wants. So yeah, so I honestly I keep up at least one or two or three broadly dashboards from different offices up all the time. So I'm kind of watching, and sometimes Chris, I'll do the one that's all of Molly Maid, where like it's
Mhm.
constantly there's a new conversation coming in, just to see what's happening, what's going on, so that I can understand, what these leads, these potential customers are saying to Rosie and how she's responding. So that's where a lot of the learning came from, is just reviewing the conversations and seeing, how she responds and what she did and how the process worked. So
Mhm.
that's a big part of it. And then of course getting the feedback from the franchisees.
Yeah, I'll say for me, the surprise was doom scrolling. Like just like you get addicted to social media, like those conversations, they're so rich in content that you just find yourself like really into it and trying to figure out a fix and change and EDA. Hopefully you guys aren't hooked anymore on all of it, but we'll see. So I just want to talk a bit about, as we wrap up here, we don't have to take the full 60 minutes, by the way, but I was thinking, Michael, as you're president of Molly Maid, if you're sitting across from another president of a franchise brand, is there any kind of one piece of advice or different things that you'd have for them?
Yeah, piece of advice. The I think the biggest thing was is what got us here to begin with, which is you have to dream big. I challenge the Molly team all the time to ask what if behind everything, right? Like what if we do this, or what if we do that, or what if this works? And that's what ultimately got us here. Like you said, it was something that we started with the web chat, and then we started asking the what if questions. And now we have what we have. So it's more of a, take the big swings usually are not as big as they seem to be. But you should definitely try. And the flip side of that too, Chris, is not everything that can be automated should be automated. So be thoughtful about what you do turn on, what you do automate for your franchise owners, and where it makes sense to do so. So yeah, just think through it.
I love Dream Big Dreams. I always think of my daughter's cartoon Sing with Warren Moon. You ever see that? Dream Big Dreams. um, but yeah, I will say that I love that advice because the systems are newer at times. And what we've seen with your brand as well as others is we have this concept of like, this is what we think you should do. But then, dreaming big dreams, you come back with feedback, and we quickly realize because AI is so configurable and the system itself and the platform can be configured at scale, that we can find, oh yeah, that's not a bad idea. Let's go do that. And it was really fun to see that and iterate over the past 18 to 24 months. Hey, Michael, there's a question in here that you probably can't answer directly, but they're talking about was the integrating Rosie and Vendasta the cost? How did you do that for franchise owners versus corporate? I'm sure you don't want to give specifics on that, but thoughts on like the cost model and how you make this work in a franchise system?
Yeah, for sure. So ultimately, we followed the way that we follow cost center or any other systems, which is it's a cost to the franchise owner. But at the same time, it can be allows your team to be more efficient. Your cost savings piece on the cost center. So overall, providing enough value to where it does make sense for the franchise owner to pay for that. But ultimately, it became a just like any other process, any other system that we have it costs the franchise owner.
Got it. Scrolling back through some of the questions here, me trying to do math on the fly was a bad idea. And somebody called out that 5,000 bookings per month, 210,000 conversations per year. That's a whole different equation, right? That's closer to
Yeah.
15% conversion. So thank you for doing that. I will try not to do math on the fly.
No.
Jacqueline, so kind of, a franchise owner successful with AI adoption versus one who struggles. Is there any advice you might have on that kind of experience as every franchise owner is very uniquely different?
Yes. So when we were launching this last year to the system, I was actually in the middle of reading a book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he talks about essentially a stick, right? It comes off of a tree. So, if it's dead and you bend it, it's gonna break, right? But if it's alive, you're gonna bend it and it's gonna move with it. So like you need to be
Right.
flexible. If you don't bend, then you're gonna break. So I think,
Hmm.
and I used that when we were rolling it out. You know, there's owners that are going to say, "Oh my gosh, my customers are never going to engage with an AI. They don't want to do it." So I think the ones that are more open to it, that are the ones that adopted easier. They were more successful out of the gate. Um, so that's what I was just be open to it and
Yeah.
understand, business changes. We need to evolve. We need to learn as we go. And we've got to do it together. I always tell the owners, like, if you have feedback, good or bad or otherwise, like always let me know because that's how I learn is from
Hmm.
you guys. So um, I'm grateful for everybody that that always gives feedback. Even though sometimes they think they're bothering me. It's always appreciated and wanted. But yeah, I mean, it's really just the ones that are just more open to it, that
Yeah.
are, does that make sense?
It does. It makes total sense. I like that analogy of the bend versus the break. I also found that you did have owners who were more willing to be early adopters, as you'll see with any system. And as they saw success, the other owners felt greater trust, I think, coming directly from the owners versus certainly a vendor, but even corporate. It was really nice to have some of those early adopters in the corner.
Yeah,
All
for
right.
sure.
So, Michael, AI is here to stay. The question is, how do you layer it in without losing what your system has always been known for? Molly Maid has a wonderful brand, high value brand. As you mentioned earlier, the code of ethics and all this too. So, talk to me about this quote.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, the fact is that Molly Maid is a 40-year-old brand, but you would not know it from the systems that we have and the process that we have and a lot of the success that we're seeing. And quite frankly, it's not a whether you should or shouldn't. It's how do you do it? How do you get smart about it? But don't lose that high touch part of your business by going high tech. You can do both if you're thoughtful about it and that's our intention, and that's what we've accomplished here.
Love it. On that high tech, high touch, you guys leverage call centers. There's some questions in there about voice AI. Just so the audience who's watching this back, Molly May isn't currently leveraging voice AI like the other brands are, but and that's because you have a full call center system set up, right? And you're kind of meeting both
Yes.
that need. Okay, that need for a personal touch as well as the personal touch through Rosie. Great, and skip over here then. I don't have my final slide. Oh, okay. So questions. So we're at the point of questions. Unless there's any other final recaps, Jacqueline, Michael, you'd like to throw out there. We've been trying to answer the questions along the way, but any final thoughts? So I'll throw some out there as we wait for questions. Amanda, thank you for your great insights, comments. I do have a couple questions for the audience if they don't have them for Jacqueline here and Michael. When an owner does turn on Rosie, what's the 30-day learning curve like?
So I think
Jacqueline.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but um, just understanding how it works, like what are the capabilities that Rosie can do, right? It's actually much easier than I think most people expect.
Mm,
I think it's a lot of like reviewing the conversations, right? Understanding how she engages with the customers and what she can do.
hmm
So again, depending on the business, like there's certain things that she can and can't do. So I think them knowing the capabilities and then learning when human intervention is needed, I think is
Yes.
probably the biggest thing. Um, but yeah, I would say, gosh, after the first month, probably even, 2, 3 weeks, most teams have moved from kind of watching every conversation really, really closely, to realizing that Rosie's got it. Rosie's figured it out. She's booking things, and they don't have to watch every conversation. So I would just say
Yeah.
understand the capabilities and just learning how it works and
I think the
Yeah.
other cool thing is that Vendasta gave us the ability to train Rosie across the system by just training her once, but then also gave every franchise owner the ability to make some local policy decisions. Like Jacqueline, for example, said earlier about the Miss Molly Foundation, if that's something that you do, right? If you have, there's some cities like the city of Chicago where they charge a parking fee because it's just harder to find a parking space
Mm,
versus a suburban area, right? And so obviously it's not something that applies to every Molly Maid location, but the fact that Vendasta gave us that ability gave us the ability to go to the owner and say, yes, like there is like a very templatized training for Rosie, but you can still make local decisions and local modifications without harming the rest of her knowledge base and the rest of the way that she's been trained by adjusting those small things. So it was really because of the tools that we had from Vendasta that we were able to do a lot of that and get that owner buy-in because they knew they could still customize to the unique needs of their business.
yeah. Yeah, I love that feedback. Thank you for talking about that. The one to many, train one, roll it out to many through templates. And then the ability to customize individually is certainly something I see with your brand as well as many other brands that are adopting the system. And there is always that option to hand off, right? Like maybe AI doesn't have the answer. So I think that is sometimes a concern that I see. And, whether it's in voice and you can just transfer the call or whether it's on digital, you can say, it's a simple like customer service. Sorry, we're not able to answer that right now. We'll get back to you right away. And then that lead is sent directly to the owner as a notification, whether they have that notification via email, their point of sale, or their phone, then they can call that contact immediately if the AI doesn't have an answer. It doesn't, we've done a lot of work and training on it to not make up answers, right? So it's just passing that off to the human when needed, which has been great to see. All right. Well, I think that's it for the closing thoughts. I know we're at 45 minutes, which is great to give some folks their time back. Do want to mention there's an AI brand audit. You'll be able to see that here in the text chat and any kind of material we send out coming from Vendasta. I want to thank very much Michael Silva Nash, Jacqueline Jury. Really appreciate it. Everything you've put into Rosie is been seen by the minute every day here, 24/7, with your franchise owners and the customers that are engaging with your brand. One of my favorite things is when Rosie books the job, follows up with the lead, books the job, and then goes on and send their review request. Because you know what happened there was they actually completed the service. There was actually revenue into Molly Maid. We're able to follow up with an AI to ask how they liked it. Then you get that 5-star review. It's really fun to see from the only human touch point or the actual cleaning of the home. So it's great. Michael, Jacqueline, thank you. Cindy, I see you jump back on. Any final notes?
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much. That was really great content. And the chat was blowing up the entire time, so the engagement was great as well. Just a final reminder to everyone, this was recorded, and the recording, along with the slide deck, will be emailed out before end of day. But yeah, thank you everyone so much again for joining. Thank you, Jacqueline, Michael, and Chris for your time, and thank you to Vendasta for sponsoring today's Wednesday Wise webinar. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks for
everybody.
having us.
Bye, everybody. Appreciate